Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And in all our authenticity, Anissa, your host, somewhat scheduled this session for an hour later. So for those that are joining us from LinkedIn, you would have seen I've just quickly updated it. And never mind, we also have the inquiry date on the event poster. I don't know if you noticed that, Jillian. Somebody showed it to me earlier this week, and I said, you know what? It doesn't matter. The event is the right date and time. Little did we know it was the wrong time, but we are here nonetheless. And so, welcome again for a second time back, Jillian, to a topic that we know is near and dear to both of us. And I'm going to introduce the topic, which is through the lens of the AAA path, which we came up with, I suppose, as an acronym during our last conversation. But what that really represents is authenticity, agency, and accountability. So we're going to explore this week stepping beyond who you've been told to be and into who you truly are. Taking off those masks, unveiling the true self. So it's about unpacking what it takes to own your truth, take responsibility for your choices, and lead your life with intention. Because real freedom begins the moment the mask comes off. So, Jillian is going to show us how to be unapologetically you. And just a little bit of background in case there are new people that are joining us. Jillian is a trauma-informed certified transformation coach, specializes in radical self-love. I like the radical part there. Metacognition, consciousness, unification of mind and body to help people transform the way they experience themselves and life. Her expertise provides a safe space for clients to grow towards expansive self-love and self-actualization. It's like we are sisters, man. We're speaking the
Yes.
same language. Her
Yes.
passion for personal and professional growth is the foundation for her calling to make the world a kinder, more loving place. Before we hand over to Jillian to say hi, I'm just highlighting again our co-host Jamila is not here. She's otherwise occupied for the next 3 months in a very exciting project, which is right over this time. And so we do miss her. We miss her insights, her contribution, and just her beautiful energy and presence. So look forward to seeing her again in the future. So without further ado, it's over to you, darling. Do tell us, like, what about this topic excites you, and why?
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you so much for having me back again. Our last conversation was such a joy and a pleasure. And I know this one is going to be the same, if not cranked up even just a little more, because it's something the both
Absolutely.
of us are so passionate about. Hi, Eldred. Thanks for being here. And hi to the rest of the listeners and audience. I'm so excited. Authenticity
Yes.
means so much to me. It was sort of the surprise gift and treasure I found on my journey. I don't think it's something that we intentionally set out and look for. We look for the results that authenticity provides, right? We look for deepened relationships, fulfillment in the workplace, happiness in our hobbies and our passions. We look for those things, and the root, the actual path to those things is more authenticity. But then the barrier to authenticity can often be vulnerability, fear, and resistance around self expression. Um, and so it really is a hero's journey, and it does take grit and grace to get there. And so I'm excited. Where should we begin?
Maybe let's explain to the audience why we are so passionate about this, because I was just sharing with Jillian at the start that I just got off a 3-hour facilitation with a group of students that I facilitate skills development around power skills, which is essentially personal development. And one of the students asked me a question, like we were talking about personality that becomes your personal reality, and really that your perception becomes your reality. So part of those are always interlinked. And that our aim is really to understand the self, know the self well enough, and heal yourself to better lead yourself, because that's when we get to self-actualization. And so when he asked me, do I show up with different personalities? It was an interesting question, because as much as I'm version 4.7 now, for the first 40 years of my existence, I was not my authentic self. I had the need to please, to rescue, to be the hero and savior. Why? Because I did not deal with my own belonging, sense of belonging issues, that need for love and acceptance and validation, which was linked to my personal story. So unless you understand and accept your personal story and every experience, no matter what it is perceived to be, and how dark it might have been, and how difficult it might have been, those are the things that are the catalysts to the triple A effect. So certainly for me, that was. So I'm over to you, maybe just to share why you got to this point.
I couldn't agree more, especially when you talk about teaching your students this and what a gift it is to the future generation. All I have ever wanted in life is to make the torch burn brighter before I pass it on. And for a long time, I didn't really even know what that meant or how to do it, but I just knew that I really wanted to make my life count and be the change I wish to see in the world, if you will.
Yeah.
And I'm so fired up about authenticity because of the ripple effect. I can see it happening in my life. Again, it wasn't what I sought out in the beginning, but it was a really, really pleasant and happy byproduct of the work we work, and all of those beautiful catalysts you spoke of: accepting the whole self, honoring your shadows, witnessing your whole self, because that is the authentic part. It's not
Yeah.
only showcasing the best, but what I've seen in my nieces and the littles that I care for and my students is that the more me I am, the more I crank my authentic truth, my full self-expression, the truth of my voice and every aspect about myself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the more I can own that and let it shine. What an example and permission I give others to shine their light. And so if I want to make this torch burn brighter before I pass it on, I better learn how to own my authentic truth, because that is the greatest gift. Not only does it feel liberating to allow yourself to stand in your truth and your authenticity, it's once you get over and you can cultivate it, you get over the fear, then everything is much easier. After that, everything is much easier because you don't have to perform. You don't have to plan ahead. You just more so allow things to move through you. It's much easier. And
Yes.
it creates a pathway to deeper, more meaningful connections. When you share your true self, you give others permission to be their true self. And then the people and places and things that are meant for you are able to find you because you're being authentic.
Because now in the spiritual realm, whatever we call that, is manifestation. But I almost want to divert from that word because it's so woo-woo and not everyone can connect with it. But we can actually bring that back to agency and accountability, right? Because when you're owning yourself, you in a space of sovereignty, you are not needing to, as you rightfully say, seek validation outside of yourself. And there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no nothing, there's nothingness actually, if I can put it that way. You don't have judgment of yourself, you don't have judgment of others. You in this journey, in this hero's journey, saying, well, actually, it's okay to not know what the next step is, but I'm going to advocate for myself and I will have agency, because agency can only come when you are living from an embodied authenticity, right? And let me just say hi to everyone that's here on Insta. I see we have Tahir, we have Ibrahim, and then we have a Dr. Rashida Davids. Thank you for being here. Thanks, Ibrahim. Oh, lovely, he says on Instagram. Please engage with us. I mean, if it took me 40 years to get to the space of authenticity, it is never too late, right? But it takes a dark night of the soul experience to almost force your hand, because it can happen two ways. It happens when you have awareness of it and you want to make an intentional shift and say, hell no, this is not the life that I want. Here's what I see for my life. Now, most people aren't necessarily there, or they don't have the level of self-awareness, or they may have self-awareness, but they may not have the ability to command that awareness so that they can influence their decisions or choices to drive better agency and accountability, right? So what I'd like to ask you, Jillian, is how do we guide our audience for those that don't know how to step into authenticity or fears it completely? What are those minuscule, small, like the very small steps that somebody can start with?
It's a great and a really important question. It takes us from the meta to the applicable. Excuse me. Like, how do you actually think? How do you actually step into it? And I'll say two things as step one, but only two things, because safety, creating a sense of safety within yourself, is required every step of the way. So I say the first step is not only safety, and I can speak on that, but also cultivating self love and self permission. I think that goes hand in hand with agency, but safety, because when we are in a activated state or a fear response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, if we are in a chronological stress response, if we don't know how, cultivating a sense of safety within our bodies and our nervous system will help our prefrontal cortex come back online, which just means that's the creative part of your brain, the connected part of your brain where you can problem solve and higher level think, and you can decide how you even want to show up in the first place. And then you soothe your fear, so that way you can take that first baby step and start to develop the grit, the self-trust, the muscle of visibility and vulnerability. So cultivating safety within your mind and your body to even begin to take down the barriers is the first step. And while we're here, a little deeper now, since we've got the safety starting to be created, for me, it was about, first, I had to learn how to love myself first. Before I could allow myself to be authentic with others and use my voice and stand in my power, it was an internal game first, a me with me game first. Agreed. I had to learn how to love myself first. And then once you can cultivate that foundation of love for yourself, or maybe let's start with acceptance. From that place, it becomes easier to express that, but first experiencing it with and for yourself in a loving way.
I have to agree. And, self-love, I feel, is together, as you say, with self-acceptance, but also with self-respect. And that is a big, big one for me, because our need to be externally validated and respected is often higher than what we respect ourselves and love ourselves internally. And so one of the students said also, it's an inner game. So I said, yes, it is an inner game. But I like what you said earlier on about dancing with our saboteurs or dancing with our demons, right?
Yes.
Because we're going to have a triple D effect here before we go.
It's the third episode, Anissa.
A third episode. Because when we can dance with our demons, there's acceptance, there's grace, right? And when we can embody gratitude for the demons, the darkness, the difficulty, and the dissonance we feel within the self,
Yes.
then that can be so much more profound in accelerating authenticity, agency, and accountability. So, you told me about this thing that you birthed, and I know we're jumping ahead, but you said something more interesting about what you birthed and what you're seeing people having difficulty. So, share with the audience what you've recently birthed and what you've seen through these difficulties, because my lens and my perspective of dance, I'm having fun, it's joy, I'm releasing whatever's stuck, and yet for others it might not be that. So tell us what you're birthing and then give us the examples of what's unfolded.
Okay, I'm so excited to share about what I've recently birthed into the world. And before I do, I want to respond to that amazing point that you just made about acceptance. And when we first had the idea to do this episode, we talked about unveiling the mask is the path to authenticity. And I want to stay there for a moment because what you and this will flow nicely into what I've birthed into the world, dancing with your demons. What you resist persists by trying to avoid things or shove them down. They just become a subtle or overt thorn in your side, or you can't fake the funk on it. So the way out is actually through, and by unveiling the mask and seeing it and dancing with it and accepting it and loving it for what it is. You know, especially when we talk about dancing with your demons or accepting and loving your shadows or moving through your fear, it's about how we can shift our relationship with that fear, with that part of ourselves, so that we can hand in hand move through life together. Because fear doesn't go away. Shadows don't go away. Imperfections don't go away for as long as we're human. And so rather than thinking that we're going to eradicate them or push them away is actually incorrect. It doesn't happen. We can heal. We can recover. But I think the most profound thing that we can do is shift our relationship with whatever we judge or whatever we fear. And that's agency. You have agency for how you respond to the thing, to the shadow, to the doubt, to the fear, to the demons, to the inner saboteur. You have inner agency on how you respond to it and how you relate with it. And how you relate with it will change how you experience it. And I like to teach my clients and share with the world, dance with it. And here's why. Dancing is fun. Dancing is energetically light. It's also energetically cathartic. You know, when you shake and move your body, and any sort of exercise, including dance, is very beneficial for your energy, emotional processing, for your nervous system. It's so regulating. And that's why I have created, now we're moving into what I've birthed, but I've created something called embodied expression, which is a conscious dance. It's about an hour, and I hold the space for people to come, shake, dance, move, and authentically express in whatever way is present for them, truly, whether they've come to strut their inner diva with confidence across the dance floor, or if they've come to tribally shake and scream and cry and release the stress of the workday or work week, or even if they just need to place a hand on their heart and sway, or if they want to make faces and sounds and try dance moves they wouldn't allow themselves to try, at another dance. This embodied expression is a very intentional space for people to embody in their body, mind and body connection, soul, spirit, body connection, and allowing whatever is present and truthful and authentic to move through, whether it's through sound, emotion, voice, or dance. And so I'm very, very excited about that. And it's a way we can physically practice what you and I, Anissa, are talking about, which is sort of this metaphorical, spiritual or mental or emotional or behavioral dancing with your fear, accepting your whole self. Embodied expression is 1 hour where I invite people locally, and I do this at retreats, to come practice it in your actual body in real time on the dance floor.
Do you ever do this online? Have you ever hosted an online version of it?
I have not. There are many other types of conscious dance that people can find online streamed, and maybe one day I'll stream it. I'm really enjoying in-person connection right now and facilitating it in person. That's not to say I won't ever, but if your listeners are interested in an online, there's ways to find online streamed conscious dances. I just don't lead them myself.
I mean, I would love an online stream with what you're doing in the flesh, and me bringing a group of people together this side in the flesh, and we kind of streaming both sides. Imagine energetically the vibrational shifts that will happen between the two continents.
Oh yes, and that's cool. I have discussed that with a dear friend of mine who's in Canada, and she was a guest on your show as well.
What's her name?
Hold on a second. Angelique.
Angelique. I can't forget Angelique. Angelique was just amazing. Oh, that's right.
Yes,
that's how you came on.
I love her so much. I just had my brain ran off the tracks. Yes, Angelique wants to do what you said, have her group in person with her in Canada, and me lead a virtual embodied expression session from here. So if you get a group together, Anissa, I'm open to trying it.
Maybe we must start a movement on this. I know there's many, but yeah. Anyway, so let's come back to some of this conversation. I mean, if I think about us as entrepreneurs, I was so blessed to have the opportunity to speak at an event yesterday. But this event was not like any other typical event. And I actually have a co-host on another segment that I host, which we used to call the Entrepreneur Mindset. But we're rebranding and we're relaunching next month. So watch out for that. The beautiful thing about this event, it was small, it was intimate, and it set the tone for people to feel it was okay to be vulnerable. Because everyone around the table were either an SMME, a small, medium, micro, or medium enterprise, or they have just left their formal employment and pursuing this world, right? And so there's a lot of what we're talking about, this AAA path that takes place for individuals to even say, I am leaving formal employment to enter into this world, because it takes a level of agency to say, I know myself well enough and I know the value that I can bring to this world. But there may be some struggles in between with holding yourself accountable. There may be parts of your authentic self that you're still nervous to share with the world. So yesterday, our facilitator, it was myself as a speaker and a financial advisor, really. One of the most humble, down-to-earth gentlemen that I met, because financial advisors are just going to talk money and numbers. And that's generally what they do. They do the number crunching. But this guy, Anthony, he was so humble and spoke about the difficulty even for himself as a financial advisor, that if he doesn't see clients, he doesn't earn. So it's a constant reinforcement of you've got to drive agency and hold yourself accountable. But what was so beautiful is that thing that you mentioned earlier on, the safety. And when people feel safe, we set the tone for them to share more vulnerably.
Mm-hmm.
But in this lonely world of entrepreneurship, or the perceived lonely world, because it's not actually lonely, there's lots of support.
Yes.
How would you suggest this AAA path to be fully embodied for SMMEs? Because they like to say it's all okay until somebody gives them permission.
Yes.
So when I shared my story of my challenges, of more recent challenges over December, January, and February being my low seasonal periods and zero income months, it gave them permission. And they were so grateful and thankful that, yeah, I'm sitting and still standing tall, well, sitting and standing tall, but being able to share the conviction of the story and keeping on with it.
Yes.
How do we do this? How do we give them a framework other than just the AAA? I want to call it, this is a framework of sorts, but what else?
What you all did with SMME, is that it? Was
Yes.
so important. Because, I mean, for those entrepreneurs, I do say keep going, and particularly keep finding the communities and support systems that allow you to feel safe to be vulnerable in. Because the thing about entrepreneurship is it's like the soul development journey nobody knew they were going on, right? You go to be an entrepreneur for certain things, but you didn't know you were going to get a whole soul and spirit revival. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And it can be very challenging, like on the fetal position on the floor, up at night. And in order to protect your brand, that's the part that everybody leaves out. And it is such a disservice to future entrepreneurs when it is not clearly shouted from the mountaintops. Two things can be true at once. You will have a dark night of the soul. It will be hard. Sometimes you will have days and nights where you say, what have I done? What am I doing? And your dreams are equally as possible. So keep going and keep being in rooms where there is authenticity happening, where there is vulnerability happening, to see more leaders in this space. Own the grit that is required to be an entrepreneur, and the peaks and valleys of entrepreneurship is so important. So the accountability piece is essential. I don't think from the lens of I need someone to push me and always be telling me what to do, but fear sometimes can be so powerful. I would not have made it as far as I did and been able to keep going if it were not for my peers, my friends, my coaches, my teachers, my mentors, and the communities that I intentionally, agency, put myself in and continue to stay surrounded by, in the middle of the herd, as some groups call it. Like, stay in the middle of the herd so that way you know how not alone you are and you can be nudged and supported when it's aligned. There's so many examples of, even just for this embodied expression. The first time I brought it to my community, I was sharing about it with a fellow entrepreneur and a sister of mine. And I was saying, listen to the fear and resistance in this. And he said, well, I'm just looking for the right place to have it. And she said, you know where to have it. You know where to host it. You already have a place. But I wouldn't book it. And it was the fear being so sneaky. And she said, okay, well, we're not leaving this lunch until you book it. And
I love that.
Yes. And let me be honest, what came up for me was so ugly. I was so resistant. My nervous system responded so like, No, I don't want to. It has to be perfect. It has to be the right thing. I can't choose yet. Fear flew up. I regulated my nervous system right there at lunch. And then with her support and accountability, I moved through my fear and booked it. And thank goodness I did, because we had the best turnout and we had so much fun and it was dreams come true. But if it weren't for that accountability, how long would I have kicked the can down the road?
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, again, what came up in yesterday's conversation was, I mean, um, Brad was saying something about I have such a big following on LinkedIn, and I stopped and I said, but it's never about the vanity metrics. The moment you're going to chase likes, comments, engagement, or if you are thinking you need to run an event and you need to have bums in seats and so many people need to show up and you need, I had to learn. My first event was in Women's Month in South Africa. Lesson learned, I will never do an event during a Women's Month, because by the time my event happened, there was event fatigue. But be that as may, the lessons that I learned is that my expectations and my attachment,
Yes.
that everyone will connect to what it is that I am passionately inspired to put out into the world, because I believed in it. And authenticity is so important, because even my bag, I don't know if I have one here, I had something printed on the goodie bags where authenticity is a superpower, right? And I was super chuffed, and it's like I got in touch with corporates and I was bold and I leaped. Here's the opposite. I didn't have resistance to ask, to send it out, and to do whatever it took.
Yeah.
But closer to the time of the date when I had to actually have the event, it was like, maybe I should extend the date to later. Maybe I need to get the right audience and, right? So as much as I believe wholeheartedly in authenticity, and I have agency and I can hold myself accountable, I still needed somebody to say, well, why are you actually doing this? And was this ever about the amount of people you wanted at your event? Because even this segment, I have said, if only one person turns up to watch this, and I don't have a lot of people viewing it on YouTube, it doesn't matter, because what we're putting out into this world is what is necessary to shift mindsets, heart sets, and soul sets, and to change the generational traumas and cycles that exist. So again, it can be masked in having it all together and being okay with having resilience and grit and all of these beautiful words that we keep speaking. But behind it, something else will show up, and it can be so subtle, like mine was, where I wanted to delay the event. So, any other ideas from your client experiences that displayed the subtleness of having the AAA effect, but actually in a subtle manner, it was creeping behind the scenes? How do we get our audience to know what are those ones to, cultivate awareness for?
Oh, yes. Common forms of resistance include, but are not limited to, what we call blank brain, or if you're saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, that's a fear response that you
Yeah.
can look out for. Procrastination, like both you and I and our clients see all the time, is like kicking the can down the road. Maybe later, not yet, someday.
Mm-hmm.
Confusion, distraction, and procrastination, and like that gas brake motivation. One day you feel like it, the next day you don't. These are all really common signs to look out for that are indicators that it's quite possible and probable that your nervous system is in a fear response. They're subtle because they sound logically sound. It's
Aha.
perfectionism. It's perfectionism creeping through. It's people pleasing creeping through.
Being the hyperachiever, it has to be the top, the best, the shiny object syndromes.
Keep an eye out for those.
Well, it relates because that need to have it all perfect makes you not take imperfectly perfect action.
Well, that's where the real growth lives, though.
Yes.
That's the whole
Yes.
thing. That's how this life unfolds anyway, imperfectly.
And so authenticity then is being our imperfect selves, right?
Yes, exactly. So if you want to flex your authenticity muscles, allowing and creating a different relationship, maybe a higher tolerance for imperfection, flaws, shortcuts. Done is better than perfect. That's where you develop the muscles and the fortitude and the skills and experience. That's really how the mind learns. Look at babies, for example. When people say baby steps, it's funny because babies don't take calculated, preconceived, pre-planned, careful steps. They lurch, they lean, they fall. And that's how they learn to walk. Baby steps are not carefully planned out, perfectly planned. They're leaned for.
And so, I mean, some of these adaptations that we show up with, like the pleaser, the hero, the savior, even the good girl, the bad girl, or the bad boy. I mean, some of these adaptations are based on the constructs of our lives, right? And they define how we actually show up. So the performance nature of who we are, I want to say to our audience is that you only showed up or are still only showing up with what you know best and how, based on those assumed adaptations that you took on to feel safe.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So how does one then, if those made you feel safe, how do you create a new version that is this authentic self, that that feeling of safety in that persona, in that archetype? How do you know it's no longer safe? Right? Because if you're so familiar with it, how do you recognize it's no more safe to be that?
We all have the capacity to learn how to create the safety within ourselves. And when you can zoom out and see that behavior, that archetype, even though it's comfortable and familiar and it feels really safe because your nervous system loves the familiar. Of course it does.
Yeah.
That's what it learned. That's what it knows. Of course. But it might no longer be serving you. Again, working with the nervous system is top tier. And I also believe in allowing, like, parts work or inner child work, or just allowing that part of yourself to be witnessed, to be fully expressed first. We feel it to heal it. And that means creating the safety within yourself and going there with yourself. Who is here? Is it the people pleaser I learned to be? Is it the perfectionist? Is it the version of me who learned it wasn't safe to use my voice or to be emotional or to upset other people? Okay, let me bring them to my mind's eye, maybe do a little visualization with them and see them, and then let them be there. What do they need to say? Let them say it. What do they need to do? Is it cry? Is it scream? Is it dance? Is it a hug? Whatever they need, give them that, and don't rush them. Don't rush through it. Just allowing it to be witnessed, accepted, loved. Because like you said, Anissa, that was a version of ourself that learned that. Of course they did.
Yeah.
Normalizing that for that version of yourself saying it's okay. Of course you feel that way. Of course you learned that. Of course you did. And now, as the wiser, more mature version of myself, I'm here to tell you we don't have to people please anymore. What other people think of us is none of our business, or insert whatever wisdom you have for that version of yourself. And then, like, hand in hand, you and all of the former versions of yourself can walk out of there, and you can let them know how safe it is to be whatever it is you're trying to be, a more authentic version of yourself. And practice.
I mean, I've been making a few of your golden nuggets. I've just been typing along as I can. Thank you, Kareem Kaji, for joining us on Insta. Please engage with us. For those that have questions, comments, please share it. We have about 18 minutes left on today's stream and conversation. But I like this about feeling it to heal it, because unless you're going to label and know what is showing up. So I like to talk about, and I may have said it in the last stream, your triggers is your treasure, right? If you're feeling that you are triggered, there's some treasure in there. Go and discover, go and find, go and excavate it. Like, what is the treasure to find? And for me, that treasure was the moment I felt like I wasn't belonging in a space, or I wasn't validated or recognized. I had to sit with myself and said, what am I reading into within this moment? Who am I showing up as in this moment? You spoke about the inner child and the parts work. I made a note of that. And the interesting thing is, so many of us as adults are walking around with that inner child. And please, it can't always not, it's not, doesn't mean it's always the wounded inner child.
Right.
It's not always the wounded. We don't all come from a wounded trauma background. Sometimes we come from really good homes,
Yes.
and it just means that within us that's different and unique. And when we home that come from, I certainly come from one of these homes, but I'm sure for those that are listening, if you came from a well-grounded, stable home environment, and yet you still find you're struggling, and you still find yourself getting treasured, what I was able to connect that with for myself is that whatever my values were, what was important to me as a child may not have been necessarily recognized. And so I suppressed the things that were important to me. And then I became resentful internally about that. And so what I found was, if somebody was acting outside of what was my value system, I would get triggered. So I'm all about diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice and civility. And those are the things that are important. I fight for the underdogs. And even if it is not my problem, I'm going to fight for you. But deep down, it was where I was not feeling that was recognized for me. Right. And so the very thing that I am triggered by, with others not acting in accordance to that, here's where the rubber hits the road. Your authenticity, your values, your agency, and your self accountability goes out the window, because when you're triggered and you haven't felt it or feel to heal it, as Jillian says, you're going to react and not respond. Have you got any examples of that I've just explained within yourself, where you didn't show up with this AAA factor?
Of course I do. And anybody who's a human being does.
Are you happy to share a juicy one that gives us a great vital lesson? I know there are many.
Yes. I want to be mindful of protecting other people's stories, but of course they're all
Yeah.
intertwined. So I can say it this way though, because it's very juicy and I do want to share it. Somebody who I love so much set a boundary, and it triggered me wildly because in that moment, I made it mean something about me. I made it mean I wasn't fit enough. They don't like me. They don't respect me. They don't approve of me. I'm not good enough for them. And in the moment when they set the boundary, which was as simple as, oh, we're not available for that. That's not going to happen. That's not going to work for us. It was very simple. But to me, I was so triggered because it meant I made it mean something that it didn't mean.
Yeah.
And I could feel my whole body respond. I was angry. I started to fly immediately into judgment, and I started to react, and I was texting them back in a very prickly fashion. I'm a very sweet, loving, I'm like extra kind and flowery, but I was very prickly in my interaction with them. And it took me days to process it. And, you know, they wanted to have other conversations with me after the fact about other things. They were moving on because their boundary didn't mean anything about me. And they didn't even have any idea that I was going through everything I was going through. And I had to say, hey, I'm going to come back. I need to emotionally process so that way I can show up clean and clear and respond rather than react. And then I did. And we had a beautiful high level conversation about it, but it took me days to process it emotionally. And I want to share that the processing for me looked like, okay, so-and-so didn't respond. They then set a boundary with me. What did I make that mean? And then I realized and remembered our brains automatically assigned meaning to things. That doesn't mean it's the truth. It's just a perspective. So once we can isolate that perspective, then we can choose, it doesn't mean anything about me. It actually means more about them than it does about me. Now I can remove my personal self from it and then regulate myself, feel it to heal it, and then respond less attached, less attacked, because you're not actually attacked. It's just the meaning maker in your mind perceived it was.
You know, so I want to stay with the meaning maker in the mind because we spoke about the prefrontal cortex. And I mean, you and I both love the neuroscience and the behavioral psychology. But for those that are not exposed to it, I had a online mentor, John Assera, and I did a course many years. He was also in The Secret. He had a course, Winning the Game of Money. But I love the way that he described the different parts of our brain. And he spoke about the Einstein part of our brain, which is the prefrontal cortex. It's the executive functions when you are really thinking through and there's less emotion or reaction.
Yeah.
Or the Frankenstein part of the brain, which is the amygdala part of your brain, which is really in that hijack, which we spoke about earlier, fight, flight, freeze. So I try and remind myself, am I in my Einstein or in my Frankenstein energy or space right now? And it's just a way to check in and hold myself accountable that it's a projection, because often our perceptions is also a projection of what's going on in this monkey mind, of what's really happening there. I do find for me that if I step away from my head and move into my heart space, that also allows me to just stay a bit more grounded and not be in that judgment. So, in the last few minutes that we have remaining, tell us, I mean, what are some of those practices that can reinforce this AAA factor, that we can cultivate it to improve and expand and not shame ourselves if we're not at a certain level? Because I almost feel that authenticity and agency and accountability has different levels.
Yes.
That the more you grow and expand and have that self-love and respect and acceptance, the authenticity elevates, agency elevates, and the same with accountability. But it requires some holistic practices to do that. Dancing was one of them, but what else? Sign to help.
Right, exactly. Well, that's really where I wanted to go, was actually, I think the one practice is that the moment you notice, increasing your accountability. So practicing accountability, meaning, okay, I noticed and I'm not going to bypass this. I'm going to pause and take accountability for this moment and how I respond. Whether that is, I need to excuse myself for 90 seconds and go dance and shake it off, or I need to pause and take a deep breath, or I need a few days to process my emotions and my feelings. That accountability, I think, is the first step to remembering and tapping into your agency. You are the only person who is going to be able to do this for you. That takes us out of a place of victimhood and autopilot reaction into, I get to choose how I respond. It really requires us to slow it all down. And then the more we can slow down, the more room we have to show up authentically and therefore create these deeper, more meaningful responses, relationships, and fulfillment, like real truth and courage and vulnerability and visibility. So that slowing down is the practice I would encourage everybody to try. Slowing down the way you speak, slowing down when you're walking through the hallway or through the office or from your car to the building, or slowing down your meals, slowing down your response timing by just 10%, and see how much authenticity comes as just a byproduct, a happy result of slowing down.
Wow. I'm processing that part because we are on autopilot. It's the next thing and the next thing. However, I want to bring it back to the inner child again. Because between 0 and 7, for most of us, we are untainted. We're in that authentic essence. Right? So
Yes.
When you talk about inner child work, I mean, how do we get people to connect to that awe, that wonderment, that joy that a child has? And I am guilty. Sometimes my 11-year-old carries on and talks, and my social battery is at the end of its tether, and I'm like, can you stop talking for a moment? And can you be quiet for a little bit? But this is this natural essence of this child and the wonderment and the curiosity that they sit with. And yet we're guilty of suppressing it for them, and then they become the adult that performs based on the mood, the person, the circumstance, the event. How do we reconnect back to that wonderment? I mean, is it drawing? Is it art therapy? Is it stretching ourselves, doing something completely different to our logical brain would normally even comprehend that we would take on outside of dance and the other practices that you've mentioned?
It's all of the above. It's thinking back to this. It depends, really. I want to say it depends on the person and the child that you were. But thinking back to what did light you up and bring you joy as a child, and then maybe, just maybe, daring to do that today, allowing yourself. And I think it's about giving yourself permission to be more joyful, giving yourself permission to be more full of awe and wonderment, giving yourself permission to talk as much as you want to talk until you're done talking. Giving yourself permission to fully express like a child would, to be unfiltered. And I'd encourage the listener, if it feels like too far of a jump from where you are now, maybe you're very buttoned up now, that's okay. It's of course you are. Of course, many of us are. But try 10%. Can I infuse 10% more joy into this activity? Or if awe and wonder was a person, what would they say in this conversation? Personifying the characteristics of your inner child in that way will give you the ideas and start the creativity to how you can infuse more of that in the moment, in the activity, in who you are being.
I like that you said that, Jillian, because there are many children. I'm one of those that can't connect to a lot of joyful and positive memories of joy and awe and wonderment. I had to create that world, and my creation of that world was through reading different books and escaping into those worlds in those books. And it also gave me a sense of what is possible outside of my reality. So I do love that you've given the audience such a powerful golden nugget to say, visualize, go and think about somebody that you admire that embodies and demonstrates this awe and wonderment, because it's not always accessible for everyone.
Right.
So even in our work, I'm sure you'll know, when you ask somebody to visualize or write a letter to your future self, the students today were like, they were struggling.
Yes.
And I was like, don't think about the obstacles, the barriers, your challenges, your pain. Think about how you took that pain and moved it to purpose. How you took victimhood and became victorious. How you took worrying to become the warrior, and that was a way for me to kind of, because they're still young, we can't speak all these neuroscience terms necessarily, but it's make it relevant and applicable for you with wherever you are. So that 10%, it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't have to be grandiose in any form.
Especially because no child had the same childhood, not everybody's childhood was different. It was not all awe and wonder for many children. It's a lot harder. So then to encourage those children became adults to dream big and want happiness things for themselves that they have never yet considered possible is a huge stretch. So meeting yourself with grace wherever you are and practicing the art of possibility can be as slow or accessible as of a journey as needed,
I think you and I need to think about a new term. Instead of saying reparenting your inner child, I think we need to think about something there. What could be different that is more relatable? Because for me, reparenting your inner child seems even bold and too much and overwhelming, right? So no need to answer that. And anybody that's listening that may have an idea, let's think about that.
I do have one. I have an idea.
You do? Do tell.
Well, the class that I just recently birthed into the world is fresh on the mind. It's called Embodied Expression. And so maybe we embody and express our inner child. I know it sounds crazy, but give yourself permission to be ridiculous and audacious.
Give yourself, I'm going to type that in as the closing nugget.
Yay!
Give yourself permission to be, what was the last two?
Ridiculous.
Crazy and what?
And
ridiculous.
Audacious.
And audacious.
Yeah.
Jillian.
Inner child will thank you. They love ridiculousness and audacity.
I like that. So on that note, we have come to the end of today's conversation. It's like we've just been having fun here, and now we have to end it. But we will think of another reason to come together again. And maybe what we should do is bring Angelique, and maybe it can be a few of us in the room. What about that idea?
I
So that
love
we can have 5 or 10 in maximum in studio. So let's think about who you would like to invite, and I'll think about who I'd like to also re-invite or new people. And let's have a dancing with the demons party of notes.
Yes, that is such a great idea, Adisa. I can't wait. And I can't wait to connect with Angelique and tell her she's coming to this party.
Please do. And as always, please go and find a suitable date, because right now I think there are some spots in between in the months, but we have scheduled all the up until July. So I'd love to make sure that we get it in the calendar, and I will think about a few people, like-minded souls. Everybody that's come on here are all like-minded souls. So we can invite anyone that from the previous guests that would like to join again.
So fun. I can't wait.
Maybe you want to invite some of your clients that were in the embodied expression dancing, and they can come and shade some narrative around that.
Ooh, yes, I'd love to.
So thank you for being here and availing yourself yet again, and bringing your wisdom, your authenticity, and holding us accountable that are sitting here today, and giving us permission to, have that agency. For those that have joined us on Instagram, thank you for staying with us. And again, I want to give you the last word, but before I do that, join us again next week, the same time. Hopefully, I won't have the glitch again with getting an hour scheduled later than I was supposed to. But we show up regardless, and we show up in our authenticity, which is our superpower. Those that are watching the replay, don't hesitate to find Jillian online. She's on LinkedIn, Facebook, and get to know more about her. She is such a powerhouse and so humble, and such an amazing woman to have in our space. So over to you as the final word, and then we'll say goodbye.
Anissa, thank you so much for having me for another beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for who you are and what you do in this world. It is so important. Keep shining your light and sharing. It's such an honor and a blast to be here. And I can't wait for our next conversation.
I can't wait for our next dance. I'm going to call it a dance.
Yes.
Anyway, so we will be authentic in the next one, and maybe some of us will be doing some dances along with the conversation. That's just putting it out there.
Let's go.
And whoever wants to join us, let us know. And until next week, see you then. Stay in touch, Jillian. We'll be talking soon. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Stay with me, Jillian. You can stay until I close off.